Hey everyone, my name is Marcin Iwiński and I'm the co-founder of CD Projekt. When I started CD Projekt 25 years ago, one of its founding principles was honest and direct communication with gamers. When CD Projekt Red, the game development part of CD Projekt, was born, it added something important to that principle, the ambition to make the best games in the world. It became our mission and something that guided us up until now. Based on that legacy of genuine and honest communication, you've trusted us and pre-ordered our game. And despite good reviews on PC, the console version of Cyberpunk 2077 did not meet the quality standard we wanted it to meet. I and the entire leadership team are deeply sorry for this, and this video is me publicly owning up to that. Please don't fault any of our teams for what happened. They all are incredibly talented and hardworking. Myself and the board are the final decision makers, and it was our call to release the game. Although, believe me, we never ever intended for anything like this to happen.
What is up, guys? This is your boy Zilla, and welcome to today's episodes. I'll be reviewing one of the biggest video game disasters of this decade, possibly bigger than even Fallout 76. Yes, I'm talking about Cyberpunk 2077, and the week before I hyped this game up really a lot, so much so that I said it was going to be game of the year pretty much guaranteed, and everything that happened at the launch, everything that could have possibly went wrong for this game did and multiplied times 5. Did not see that coming. Also didn't see CPR completely betraying the fans' trust by holding back the review codes for the base console versions, knowing they were broken, and then saying it like 2 months ago that they were in a great condition when they really weren't. Just completely having one of the worst launches since Fallout 76, and then some on top of that, being removed from the PlayStation Store as of the recording of this video. But in this review, I'm going to be breaking down the great, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the downright horrible things that I have seen in this game for the past 130 hours. Yes, I have been playing this game. for 2 playthroughs, 130 hours, and all the footage that you see in this video, unless I put a disclaimer at the bottom of the video, because some of the footage may be coming off PC and pre-release footage just to compare, but almost everything that you're going to see in this video is off my base PS4 experience. So without further ado, let's get into my deep dive review of Cyberpunk 2077. I think there's no better place to start this review than one of Cyberpunk 2077's biggest strengths, its map design. Night City is one of the greatest maps ever designed in video games history. The architecture of this map, from each region going from one to another, and the multi-different environments that you can go through in this game, I wouldn't be surprised if a professional architect was brought in by CD Projekt Red to do this map, because it's absolutely immaculate in detail, scope, and structure. And to give you an example of how detailed this game is, let's start off with the place where you start the game at, Watson. Okay, it's broken up into 4 very distinct regions, starting off with Little China, where your character lives and most of the quests take place there. The Mox's home base is there, or their strip club, and most of the game's events take place around that area. It's a huge metro area. It's very beautiful, has high skyscrapers, combined with Cyberpunk's great graphics. It's just a beautiful sight to take in. And I don't think a game has really made me just look and stare in awe since Red Dead Redemption 2. That's how amazing the graphics combined, when it's not having bugs, combined with the architecture, how good this game really looks. And then going from there to Kabuki, where it's this scrunched up town, kind of toppled over each other, and you get this kind of claustrophobic mini Chinatown feeling when you're in Kabuki, just completely changing environments and just giving another feel, another ecosystem, even though they're right next to each other, having different streets and highways interconnecting in between. And then you can go up to North Side, where it's more of an industrial district. You know, you have a lot of factories mixed in with the occasional mega building in the distance. And then we have the final region, which to me is a whole entire theory in and of itself, which is Arasaka Waterfront, where there's a whole bunch of Arasaka buildings pretty much lumped together to make this one giant region. It just kind of puzzles me, because if this was for nothing, why are all these buildings here? And plus, on top of that, there are no missions that ever send you to Arasaka Waterfront, unlike Northside, where you did get a couple of missions, but most of them were in Kabuki and Little China, which makes it even more strange how that huge region of an area never got any missions, has seemingly a huge portion behind the gates that look like is another whole entire area that you can go to, which leads me to believe that this is probably one of the biggest cut pieces of Cyberpunk 2077. And just in this region, there's a whole lot of buildings that you never go into in my 130 hours of playing. And when I went back to, comb through the map, what I was finding is that this game, just in this particular region, had so many buildings that you just couldn't go into. And you might be saying, well, of course, if you go up to the building, you weren't never supposed to go in it. But see, here's the difference. You can go up to the building, press to go into the building to open the door, but it says locked, which tells me there is content intended to be in that certain building. And just in Watson, there's probably like 30 to 40 buildings that have this very distinct interaction, which is just like some buildings that you can't go into because they're actually locked, which says the same sign that they're locked. So this was some major cut content from the game, probably some casual experiences that they promised early on in their marketing campaign, but was probably cut due to time constraints because of just the strenuous schedule that CPR had to get into during the COVID and trying to get this game out in that holiday time frame. And it's weird because I didn't even realize it in my first playthrough. It wasn't until my second playthrough that I really slowed down, looked at some of the buildings, because you heard in the advertisement that you're going to be able to go in almost all the buildings, and I actually started going up to them and they actually had an interaction to it, which is crazy how expansive this game was going to try and be. And if you look in the other regions, it's the same thing over and over again. And I'm just thinking, man, how much cut content did this game go through to try and mull its way out in 2020? Because there's just such a lack of testing all the mechanics don't fit together. Like, this game is almost in an alpha state, and to have it be in this state but to have the map be so good, like, just a testament to how the map design team really put in the work when it comes to this game. And if the rest of the game was this fleshed out as the map is, this game would probably be game of the generation, whether you put it in last generation or this current generation. But a map is only as good as you utilize it, and this is where Cyberpunk completely goes brain dead in both concept and ideas. First, let's start off with the main problem I have: the fast travel system. It's really stupid and really lazy, when they could have came up with way better ideas to really keep you engaged in the map instead of skipping with a cutscene. And I phrase it like this: if your open world is really good, you won't have to fast travel through it. Who fast travels through Spider-Man? Almost nobody, because traveling and swinging around is a part of the fun of the game. And not necessarily it has to be the fun of the game in Cyberpunk, but with a game that wants to engage you and immerse you in its world, why would it then take you out of that world to fast travel you across the map instead of you constantly still be engaged with the game, especially with the random world events that happen around you? How are you going to absorb all that when you're too busy getting fast travel to the next area? Which brings up another problem, which is cut content when it comes to traveling around the map, which would have probably replaced the awful fast traveling system that we currently have in place right now. Because as some of you know, there was supposed to be a metro system in Cyberpunk 2077. In fact, if you look on the map, there's a whole bunch of railways on the map that literally were supposed to be a metro system. You were supposed to be able to travel from one side of the map to the other one on a train, which would have been cool. You could have got missions there. It could have been a meeting spot for different quests. It would have been something really great to keep you in the action while giving you a good blueprint of Night City to follow as you learn the city, its different tunnels and tracks, and which station leads to where, and what's the most efficient way to get to this place, which in turn helps you traverse the map more efficiently and actually has a learning period. You know, you're actually learning something about this game. This game actually requires something of you, which is rare in games these days. Heck, I would have been glad if they would have added a taxi system. Maybe you know this taxi guy that will take you places. It would have been nice, you know, having to look over some stuff while just sitting in the back of a taxi, getting lifted to where I need to go instead of just driving there. It would have been a nice little luxury, a nice little added feature. And plus, maybe the mission structure could have been changed, because maybe you could have been a taxi for a whole bunch of other characters, and that's how you get certain quests. Maybe you get a call on your phone, come to this spot, pick this character up, and then he tells you the details of the mission along the way. Maybe you get a choice to do it or not. If you do, it has a long-term story effect or a short-term story effect, depending on if it's a minor or major character. There's just so many options that you can do that with. It was spiced up the game's, you know, more repetitious mission structure, maybe getting called on the phone instead of just going and picking up the person and getting in your own car, placing a quest while you're driving him, and then getting a quest marker, and then you go to that place and maybe y'all stop, and then it goes into first person mode, and then you start talking to the person. So I mean, there's many ways they could have handled it and really changed the different mission types and how you enter them and how you complete them, just by adding a taxi system for not only yourself but other characters to usher you to place. But that hails in comparison to another huge missing feature in this game, and this especially feels painful for people who played the Corporal Light Path, because you get a taste of it but it never shows back up in the game again, and that is flying cars, which is one of Cyberpunk 2077's biggest failures from a world building perspective. I see hundreds of flying cars everywhere going throughout Night City, and even in the Badlands, convoys, transportation, and you get the taste at the beginning, which is pretty much almost false advertising, because you never experience any flying car rides again. You just only do in that Corporal Light Path in the Excalibur, which really hinders the mission structure, because if you have flying cars, you could set up a whole bunch of different ways to have a mission. For example, what if one of your fixtures had you do a mission where they want you to get rid of this scav gang that's out here stealing Excaliburs and hijacking them, right? So they put you on the Excalibur, which you fly in the air, then you get hijacked, they pull you down to this secluded area or their home base, and then you get out and you basically kill all of them, which would be a basic use for vehicles, just getting you and putting you in different situations. Not only have to go there by car, but I could do you one better, what you could do with vehicles in a sort of mission structure, right? Imagine you're bounty hunting somebody. The fixer wants this person dead. He's a leader of a gang of kidnappers, right? And y'all basically come in from a convoy copter, and basically y'all land on the roof. And the funny part is about this is that there is a mission in the game like this with Johnny Silverhand as you invade Arasaka Towers, which eventually led it to being exploded. You could take that same concept and put into a lot of the other missions of the game, which would create a new type of mission instead of reusing the same old mission steps over and over again. And just on a casual level, right? You can use flying vehicles to transport you to different parts of the city, and combined with the metro, you would be getting different, perspectives and views of the city, being able to connect where these different areas are. Plus, let's not think of this as just the vehicles that you are involved with. No, just you going through the world and interacting with random events, such as a heist in progress. Maybe the guys, their getaway driver could be somebody coming down on a flying vehicle to come get them, and maybe you can get involved or just watch how it plays out. It's like stuff like that that would make Cyberpunk so fun just to not even play, but just to look at and admire, as if it was a living, breathing world instead of being just a full-on disconnect. Now that you have flying vehicles in the background and you can't even interact with them at all, which brings up a more pressing issue, which involves the map that I have praised so much up to this point, and that's the lack of a mission ecosystem in each of the environments. I mean, the game is great with the map and where you can go and all the locales, but everything starts to feel kind of samey when you get a call on your phone or you're told to go to this place on the map instead of getting, and I'll make a really good example of this. V's home building, right, should be its own mission ecosystem where this building is so big, it has so many levels. You can have different missions taking place on level 20, level 15. It has its own characters, different police officers that hang out there. It has its own neighborhood type feel lore, okay? And then when you go out, then there's Little China, and you get a mission in Little China. There should be some missions from characters that you recurringly meet that take you into that neighborhood. You don't go outside that neighborhood. You complete the mission inside the neighborhood, kind of making it its own closed off feel. And that's how it should feel for each region, to make every district in Night City feel different, with its own gangs, with its own lore, with its own fixers that contact you to do jobs within that general area. So it makes everything feel really distinct, other than some of the bigger missions that you do, or like basically the main missions, which if you really think about what it would bring to this game, a dynamic that we've never seen in any other game, it would actually make local areas like Little China that much more better and more useful from a map perspective, right? Because now you have these big buildings that you could go into, and I'll bring it back around to the multiple buildings not being able to go into. Some of these mega buildings could be used as different mission places, and you don't have to go to every level, but just maybe have 3-4 levels per building depending on the mission that you're doing. Not only are you using space in that area, outwardly as a map, but you're using it vertically, making the map more full and condensed. And that just not only extends to the missions in the game, that extends towards some of the more casual experiences in the game, like BD experiences. There's no BD shacks in the game. There's nothing that you could just sit down and just experience, a simulation. Maybe it's a little mini game where you're playing with a katana. Maybe it's, a fancy sci-fi mission. Maybe it's a particular real scenario where you're playing as a SWAT team breaking into the building, taking on drug lords. There is a whole bunch of things concept-wise that they can do without even having to actually put it in the actual game. They could just have it as a, quick BD experience without having to think about the RPG system or anything like that. Just focus on that pure, isolated experience. And really, when you think about overall, there's a lack of experiences in Night City. I mean, just think about it. And we all know this is a huge joke because it is the worst feature in the game, and that is the police system. The police system is utterly stupid. It's the worst I've ever seen in any video game, and it's just shocking that it innovated in that direction, because I've never played a video game where the AI pops up right behind you right after you commit a crime. So now basically doing criminal acts in this game are basically impossible, because then the police is going to come right behind you, which screws up the whole police star system. But you know what? That doesn't even matter, because guess what? What crime can you commit in this game other than murdering somebody in the street? There's no other crime that you can commit in this game, which is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. You can't rob anybody. You can't rob any stores. Can't rob any cars that draws the police attention. And we all know what this wrangles back to: the awful AI by, yes, an actual AI design team. There was an actual team that designed this AI. And I know what the fanboys are gonna come to this video and say, well, Zilla, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One don't have enough power to have complex AI. Why are you blaming the developers? Blame the outdated hardware. My dude, there is better AI in Ghost Recon Wildlands. A Ubisoft game has better AI than Cyberpunk 2077. Just let that sink in for a moment. This AI isn't even industry standard. It's below the standard. I mean, good lord, I can't imagine what it was like in that AI team's like little cubicle area. I don't know what the heck they were doing, but it certainly was not working on the AI for this game. And I know it is sort of true that, the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One cannot handle complex AI, but this isn't even like regular AI. This is like full on, like almost not even AI at all. It is like the most subpar AI you could ever see in a video game. It's unexcusable on any level that anybody make excuses about this game. And even though it's kind of due to the scope of the game, we've seen games, GTA, for the past 10 years master these different type of mechanics, yet Cyberpunk can't even do the basics right. And since they can't do that, most of the game is basically screwed up. You can't add anything that's not too advanced, that's not basic, that's not industry standard. It has to be the most vanilla version of a mission. You cannot have any type of complexity to a mission. It has to be the most straightforward thing, and that extends to the world environments. You can't even do anything with that. You can't have a ship come down. And actually, I just thought about this. Does anybody remember at the beginning of the game, we were going through Watson during the lockdown, those guys getting killed by that giant psycho police cruiser? That's just straight up not even in the game, fam. It straight up just does not exist in the game. It only exists in that cutscene, and there's not even no psycho police. Like, none of it's just there. And if it was there, the AI is so broken, would it even come in? And if it did come in, would the game not crash? Like there's no way to even know if that content is even in the game, because the AI is so broken. And when you put any stress on the AI or even the game's main systems, the game just crashes. It can't handle it. It literally cannot handle what it's asked to do on the base PS4 and Xbox One consoles, which there's really one simple answer that CPR could have did. The only right answer in this equation: delay the game 2 years and put it on next gen, where it can actually handle these different performancing tasks at the same time every time I'm just walking down the street. And then there's some other dumb features that this game is missing, like how you were supposed to be able to upgrade apartments, upgrade your own apartment, buy new ones, and actually build your way up through Night City, kind of rags to riches style. All that was stripped out of the game too. So now you don't even have a sense of progression. You just stay in the same old useless apartment, which really I don't even hardly even go back to. There's no even reason to go back to. There's no reason to use the storage room, because you can carry unlimited amount of weapons, which you don't use your car trunk or your different storage places, because it's basically useless, because you could carry like nearly 50 weapons right from the start, which is just stupid, just dumb. Like, I'm just gonna call it, it's just dumb that you could just carry all these weapons, basically make your apartment useless and not have the slightest reason to go back to it. Then there's another thing that's really dumb. You can steal cars, and this game's freaking money economy is just a mess because it's very stingy. You have a limited amount of missions, and there's just not that many ways to generate money. And I'm just gonna take it back to Red Dead Redemption 2. One of the best games of the generation. Even in its simplistic time setting, it still was able to implement a feature that would have benefited this game a lot, and that is taking stolen horses or wagons and just using that as a repeat mission. Literally, this game could have had the same mechanic with its vehicles. You just take it to a stolen vendor and make money, just doing simple repetitive crimes like that to help you generate extra money. But you know, this game doesn't want you to do that because there's nothing to spend the money on other than upgrades. It has to limit what you can make, because unlike in the original game's concept where you were going to be able to go to casual experiences, actually spend extra money and do all this other stuff, you can't do that. So it has to restrict the money to make sure you don't make that much money or as much as you could be making, because that would essentially break the game. In fact, you could break the game anyway because the AI is so dumb and there's no good police system that if you add stolen car vendors, people could just basically take the cars there and abuse the system to death and make millions and millions of dollars. Only to realize why I waste all my time doing all that crap, because there's not that much things in the game to buy. So literally they just wasted their whole time making all this money to essentially do nothing. But let me just hold all the ranting so I can get to some other parts of this game. Actually, this next part I actually really like. It's one of the best parts of the game, and that is the music. The music, it would be hard pressed to say the music might be the best thing about this game. This original soundtrack, and we all know all the effort that CPR went to making these masterpieces, because not only the music is great, but it's lore friendly and it feeds into the vibe of the game. You got your rock stations, you got your futuristic techno stations, you even have a jazz station. The radio is just absolutely fantastic. This is the best original music I've ever heard in a game, and kudos to those guys because they worked really hard and got so many big time recording artists on this game to make this such beautiful music that you could just drift off to while driving to an objective or quest. And I must warn any Cyberpunk fan, like any real fanboy of this game that's still watching at the point of this video, you might as well get ready, because that's the last really good thing I might say about the game for a very good portion of this video. Because next we gotta handle story, characters, and lore. And I'm just gonna make a quick note of this before I go into all the crap this game puts you through with the lack of cohesion from the different mechanics in this game. The lore is absolutely fantastic. It's very fleshed out, and the little stories that they give you in the shards and in the journals, it's all really great. But it violates one little rule that not only takes the story but the game down just a step, maybe two. Show, don't tell. Literally, this game, you know, when you're reading some of the lore, has some of the most awesomest concepts, the corporate wars, all this junk. And instead of experiencing the corporate wars and being able to affect Militech and Arasaka and all these different factors, you come in the aftermath, which, I mean, I guess you could say the game was supposed to be focused on that, but at least have a little bit in there that you can change this world and its characters to solidify that you actually made some change in Night City. And where does all these problems start from? Not the story itself, because the story itself is really good. It's the game's story structure, mission structure, and just how the whole game plays out as a whole. This game, to me, from playing 130 hours of this game in 2 playthroughs, something has become very apparent that should be apparent to anybody who has touched this game for that amount of time. This game, at minimum, to complete should be 130 hours at the minimum, without any goofing around. From doing all the missions from start to finish, it should take you 30 hours just for one playthrough, and that's not including goofing off, exploring the map, doing the casual BD experiences, or experiencing the different open worlds and the side, doing all the extra side missions. Like, that's not including any of that. Just the core game itself from start to finish should be 30 hours. This game, I don't know who thought this was a good idea, with the structure of the game being like, oh, you can do the story in 30 hours, which is way too short, and then do the other side missions, which equal your playthrough if you like stumble around and like do everything in a very, you know, neat amount of time. Could take you 104 hours to complete all the missions in the game, and that's just way too short. That is literally like almost like a demo. This whole game feels like a demo of what the actual game was supposed to be. This game, I've never seen a game like literally go against itself with its different features and have good parts, but the good parts that are there, they're just trashed by the other features that knock it back down. Literally, why would you have the side missions, which have relationships with different main characters who are part of the main story, be separate from the actual story and just be optional, when this game is all about relationship and experiences and consequences, which the characters are second to none in this game and deserve more time to develop and actually be a meaningful part in the game, you know. And I could say this about Bethesda games because they have their different faction systems where you affect one faction and a whole faction could just be gone from the game, died, killed off, and whatever based on your actions. And that's what this game is. It has the illusion of choice, but there really isn't any choices in this game. This game structure is like a typical AAA game with its, 30-hour story and having optional quest on the side, which it essentially really says is that this game is 30 hours long. Really, this game is 30 hours long and everything else is garbage content. Instead of doing the competent thing, which would be to separate the game into different phases. Over a 130-hour period, there should be like maybe 10 phases in this game, where in each phase, different arcs come to pass and go, right? You may start arc in the second phase of Cyberpunk 2077. The arc may not conclude until the fourth phase, or if you start in the fourth phase, you might not see the consequences of your actions until like the seventh phase. So not only are you making short-term storylines, short-term consequences and goals, you're making it long-term, and players, after they see it short-term and mid-term, they're going to start be looking for the long-term effects of their choices. And really, the phases should be separated probably by like 4 main missions, and each time you complete a main mission, it should stop you and make you go explore the world and say come back later. Hey, I'll have another main job later, and you should go explore the world, do some more, missions and other stuff for your fixers, and build your relationship with your fixers, start interacting with the different factions and their representatives. And then after you complete a certain amount of content, then another main mission will open up. So that means you're not only experiencing the whole game, but the side missions and the main mission are working in unison instead of at odds and against each other like in the current product we have today. And where does that dysfunctionality start at? It starts with one of the biggest overhyped features about this game that everybody thought that was going to be such a big deal, but ended up just being a huge letdown, and that is the life paths. Guys, I mean, where do I even start with this? Okay, first off, I think that everybody could kind of generally see what the life paths were supposed to be, right? They were supposed to be not only the starting point of the game, but the umbrella that carries you through the rest of the game. They give you certain different perks, certain different perspectives, and in my mind, has you meet certain different characters, right? So the first thing with life paths is they're too short. The life path I chose was Corporal the first time. Okay, these life paths aren't even life paths. They're basically just our intros, which is a complete lie from what CPR told us what these life paths were supposed to be. In my opinion, a life path should be about 12 to 13 hours long, depending on which life path you choose. And this was also in the marketing. I didn't like it when I saw it, that Jackie was in every life path, even though theoretically it shouldn't make sense that he's there. It should be different characters that you meet, and the characters that are in that life path you should meet later. Like in the beginning of the Nomad path, you meet Pan Am or already know Pan Am, but if you chose a different life path, you wouldn't have met her until later in the game in different ways. So I thought they should have took that approach for every character in the game. Like, the only one I thought Jackie should have been in was Street Kid, because that makes sense for him to be there. And then with the other ones, you meet him later in the game. And speaking to the Corporal life path specifically, I think that is such a missed opportunity, because they had a whole lot of themes there, not only just for the story and just to get you into the mood of the game. Like for this specific life path, because I feel so strongly about the most, right? The setup of you being Arasaka counterintelligence. I mean, you going on missions. It could have just been like 10 hours of just plain setup where you just go do different missions, start getting the hang of the game, get your first couple of upgrades. This is the first phase of the game, which what is this life path also supposed to do? It's supposed to give you a vertical slice of what to expect in the rest of the game, right? So you have different short-term and mid-term decisions that not only affect you in the life path prologue, but also for the rest of the game, right? So let me just give you an example. The situation they put you in with Jenkins, right? Imagine there's an option to portray Jenkins at the the end of that prologue, right? You know, that affects you throughout the game. But what if you sided with him? You helped him get where he is and by knocking off his boss. Okay, so now Jenkins is a permanent side character or companion with you throughout the rest of the game, and you're dealing with him and his situations as he has been promoted to a very prominent boss position within Arasaka. And depending on the choice that you make at the middle portion of the prologue within that 12-hour period, you know, maybe you get blamed for a certain situation going wrong. Maybe it could just be a story beat, right, where you really have no choice to it, but you get in a situation where you fail a mission. Arasaka has to cover up this certain controversy and you had to be let go, but you know, knowing that you didn't help your boy Jenkins out through different options in the prologue, now he hires you as a merc and still keeps you in tune with what's going on inside Arasaka and sends you on different missions to benefit him. And maybe down the line outside the prologue through like Act 5, you know, y'all relationship comes to a head and you had to make certain choices whether to betray his trust or, you know, still stay in his good grace and favor. But another thing by doing the life paths like this, in this particular case for the Corpo life path, right, you get an introduction into the corporate wars, right? What if you meet different Militech people early? You get to know all these different companies. Maybe you're doing espionage and sabotage at these different companies. You know, you get a certain vertical slice, whereas with the Street Kid life path, you would be dealing with the Valentino, 6th Street, and those whole gang wars instead of dealing with the corporations. And then with Nomad, you would be dealing with the gangs outside Night City, picking which gang you want to roll with and resolving all those conflicts happening just outside Night City, and then making your way in for the main part of the game. But alas, we got none of that. We just got one of the dumbest scenes in the whole game. That freaking you know, time skip scene, like, it is so dumb, bro. Because literally, let me tell you how much this doesn't make sense, right? You do the year-long skip, okay? If you didn't do the skip, would it have changed anything about the game? The only difference is that now you don't have to do workup missions to build your reputation as a mercenary. No, you're just already a pretty good mercenary. Everybody already knows you. So basically that just took all the extra fun out the game, and now you just go from that to straight to getting the Dex job instead of working your way up, which would have actually gotten you a progression in the game. You would have actually worked up to that mission. It would actually made sense. It would have fed into the apartment system, and you buying bigger and better apartments every time you got enough money to do so. But that, you know what, that just makes too much sense. That just fits too well for this game, because apparently they just didn't do any testing. Because if I'm pointing out these flaws, right, how is a professional, you know, team of guys who did The Witcher, right, guys who literally made a game of the generation type game, how do they not see this? Which just further tells me that this game was completely not ready to come out. And because this game came out in the state that was in, the best parts of this game get murdered by the horrible parts, right? The best part of this game is the characters, the character work. Like, it is absolutely fantastic. The worst character in this game is Regina Jones, and she's just mediocre. She's not even bad. But you know, I could talk about all these characters getting robbed because of the 30-hour story being separate from the side quest, and not all of them being compiled on top of each other, and the good characters don't have enough time, and some characters just plainly just get cut out of the game, like Stillwell from the Street Kid life path. And plus, he's just such a major character, and for him to just not show up at all, like, I think, isn't he like the police chief of Night City, and he just disappears after the game starts, especially because he has a relationship with V, knowing like where she went and all this stuff. So it's like different characters got written out of the game, even though it was clear they were supposed to have a bigger part, right? Like the various different factions in the game that basically have no purpose, right? Since the game is so linear, and basically, you know, you go in these certain sections, nothing ever affects the end of the story. Basically, the factions don't make any sense under this game structure, right? Because these different gangs don't have any arcs to them except maybe the Aldecados and their rivals, you know, but that's really the only one of all the factions in the game. The Moxes are useless and only serve to enhance the plot between Judy and Evelyn, which you could have did that without the Moxes being there, so they're not even a real gang in Night City. Then there's the Maelstrom gang, which hardly get any time, because other than that demo mission, which is different from every other mission in the game, it's the best one everyone in the game. The Maelstrom gang is basically cannon fodder, just like 6th Street, just like any other gang in this game. They have no purpose to the story. In the freaking Street Kid Life Path, Padre has beef with the 5th Street gang, right? Literally, that goes nowhere. Literally nowhere. So it's like these gangs are basically useless. There's no story between you and them. And then there are other like gangs, or should be gangs and factions in Night City that should have representatives representing them, like Militech with Meredith Stout, who you legit only see for one mission, even though she would make a great main character to the story. I mean, what about those dudes from Netwatch? Why couldn't they have had representatives and been a faction? Why couldn't the NCPD be a faction? Why couldn't any of these major large corporations have, you know, people representing them for you to do jobs for them, which would have fleshed out the lore in the game? So this game has a huge lack of character and a lack of progression between the different factions and gangs. And I think the faction that is the biggest victim of this in the game is the Voodoo Boys. One of my personal favorite lore wise just got absolutely just crammed and put to the back of the game, only to have what, like 2 hours of spotlight, even though they're legitimately interesting groups of any of the gangs, and just basically have no relationship with, you know, you outside maybe one mission. It's just like, oh my goodness, can this game do anything right? Like, in the right thing they do, they can't capitalize on it. And just, okay, so what I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna go into some of the portions that I liked with my favorite character of this game, Johnny Silverhand. He's absolutely amazing. His missions are the best in the game, and legitimately he actually spiced up some of the more boring and repetitive aspects of this game. And I don't know if it's because his stuff was just so good or the other parts of the game were just so bad, but regardless, I thought they were fantastic. His characterization is fantastic, not too over the top, and the changes he legitimately goes through as a character throughout the game would have been great to see in other characters being given that much attention. But yeah, Keanu Reeves did an awesome job, and he legitimately probably sold this game, and he definitely delivers in this show stealing performance. Now I want to talk about something that is very specific but kind of feeds into what I was talking about with Mr. Stints and all the removed characters and content from this game, and this is one of the bigger ones, right? And it is the complete disappearance, or not even being of the game, of Trauma Team. Because when I first saw them in the demo, I was like, man, I want more of this. I want Trauma Team characters. I want to get into the company. I want to, you know, do merc missions with them. You know, it would have been an awesome combination, because anytime in a battle, this just team of just basically SWAT medics can come down and just wreck everybody on the field. And other than maybe like a side mission where the little helicarrier that they're in is already downed and you just had to fight like the thugs around it, they're not even in this game, which is just straight up shocking. And it's just disappointing to not see different factions or corporations that were said to be a prominent or semi-prominent thing in this game just completely not even be there at all. So I just want to make note of that on the side, you know, just a little bit salt on the wound, if you will. But as painful as that is, there are more painful things about this game, because now I want to compare what we got in this game from what was shown in the 2018 E3 demo. First off, with the different backgrounds in this game, that was completely stripped out. If you look in the little, you know, right corner, you can choose who is your childhood hero. Yeah, that's just all gone, fam. And I'll just say this for another nice thing about the game, since I haven't said anything in a while: the customization system, the body modifications, the different looks that you can equip. Even just pressing the random button, I even like build a character, I just pressed the random button. It just came with so many great options, and that's probably another one of the best things about this game. They really went all in on the graphic customization of each detail of the body part. And I just want to make that note. Well, let's just get back to the awful, okay? Because, you know, the first mission where, you know, you go into the scab apartment to retrieve, you know, Sandra Dorset, that was an awesome mission. It's pretty much the same, even though now CPR is coming out saying that demo was fake, even though it's in the game. You know, just question marks all over the place, but I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, up to that gameplay point, it looked all great. The thing is that you probably know what I'm gonna say next, because I talked about it earlier: Trauma Team not being in the game. And for me, when I faced Trauma Team in this mission, they didn't even show up. They were like, fam, we're just gonna go get a sandwich and burger before we get here. They just never showed up, and I had to reload the save. I mean, I guess that was kind of funny, but just a little bit immersion breaking, as you know, you just expect some of the basic performance in this game. You really know some of the checkpoint system of, you know, if you hit this spot, that's when they're gonna come in. It's not all seamless like the demo made it out to be. And also, it's just kind of funny, they have a third person cutscene and they just stripped it all out the game. They stripped all those out the game, even though it really seamlessly fit into the game and gave it even more immersive feel, even though it was third person. Then, you know, we get to the stash room that's basically useless and has no purpose in the game because you can carry 30 weapons from the start, you know what I'm saying? Like, just didn't expect it to be that useless. But now here's the next part. You know, V's going outside her apartment and then she sees what the announcer describes as a micro society within this mega building, which was not really the same mega building that we got in the game. And this one talking about mission ecosystem. Do you know how many missions they could have just set up within that building that could have either been resolved within that building or within the surrounding area of Little China? Which brings us to the next part of the demo, where you actually go outside the building and see all these people that didn't make it into the game, talking about it's going to be its robust systems. And let's just be honest, it's because of the last gen hardware. But I blame CUPR for that, for not just giving it extra 2 years like some of the employees thought, according to new leaks, and making the game just next gen only so it could take advantage of all that power and being able to actually run the game. So you're going through this crowd, you see a whole bunch of people, and what I get from this is that, you know, the police system was supposed to be way more detailed than it actually was. Like, I've seen that tape, but it's nowhere near as detailed as it was in that demo. And some employees are claiming that the demo is fake. I can't really believe that because everything we saw is actually in the game, albeit not to the major degree like the choice system in Cyberpunk for that mission. Half of it is still there because with the Meredith Stout, you know, different dialogue, the dialogue options have been scaled down. Like, you can tell that was changed, but I can't say it was fake or never there, because fake would imply that it was never in the game to begin with, and it is. So I think it was downscaled for time constraint reasons, because this game should have been delayed 2 years. It ran really behind schedule. So, you know, what we see with Meredith Stout and the different options like that, they changed quite a lot of dialogue. But for the most part, the mission with, you know, Royce and Dum Dum and you going there is for the most part all the same. And it ends in different ways. My particular path, which I'm going to switch to my gameplay, at the end, you know, I portray, you know, Meredith Stout. I notify them that on the card of the chip, and basically me, him, and when I mean him, I mean Dum Dum and Royce, you know, fight these different Militech bots. And it was an awesome mission. Awesome, man. If the game reused that entire formula for the entire game, this game would be goated. You know what I'm saying? But we all know that that would have taken so much more development in the time that they actually had. So that ended up becoming the highlight of the game instead of the appetizer for the game. And another thing a lot of people are not going to address when it comes to the characters, right? When I portrayed Meredith Stout in the demo and this dude called Gilchrist came up to me, it's kind of funny. I never saw that guy again, even though it was like, it would be a pleasure working with you again, and all this, that, and the third. It's like, okay, so if that was Meredith Stout instead coming up to us, giving us that same speech, we just would never saw her again. You know, I just want to make another note of Cyberpunk just completely dropping a good storyline thread and completely leaving it out to dry. And let's not forget some of the other things that were taken out of this game. Like, do we not remember when you could jack into people and actually hack them personally by just wiring, plugging into them basically? Like, that's just gone, fam. And plus the ability, that ability was actually supposed to lean into the ability to turn on people's weapons, and that's how you actually breach people, which they completely scrapped, which, you know, I just find that interesting. And that the flathead is basically cut content. You were going to be actually able to use it towards your tech build. And speaking of any kind of builds, this game was supposed to be touted as one of the best RPGs of the generation just probably a year ago if you had asked anybody. And this game is probably one of the worst RPG mechanic games to have ever coming out. Like, based on its like level of hype, this is the worst ever. Like, guys, these RPG mechanics are so retarded, so bad, and just so underdeveloped, especially for guys that made just their last game was probably RPG of the generation of the past 10 years, and they came out and got to the opposite end with this game, especially with this particular game having a great concept behind it, and it's just bad. So now let's just get into the RPG mechanics. Let's start off with the upgrade system, because this junk just ain't it, fam. It ain't it. Because I think this RPG system, or a particular upgrade system, commits one of these biggest sins that upgrade system can commit in a game, and that is, for most of the builds, they are freaking boring. And prime example number one in the upgrade system is the intelligence build, and it is just straight up just a grind to try and upgrade, because there's nothing special about the abilities. I could boil it down to this: all the abilities or all the upgrades and perks are basically just make more space, improve your quick hack stamina so you can do more hacks at the same time, and breach does more critical damage once you use your quick hacks. So basically you would breach the enemy, which basically mean hack into them, and not like in the demo in the cool way. No, it's like the boring just hack into them, so when you do use a quick hack, it does more potent damage to the enemy, which, you know, basically you're just upgrading all those to do more damage and critical damage over time in the game, which basically makes the whole thing boring, instead of giving you special perks and upgrades and special abilities, which is what perks are supposed to be. Like, let's just say for contagion, right? What if for the first two, yes, they do gradual damage over time, but there's a special perk where the third person that it spreads to, they instantly die. That's the type of specialized perks that this game would have needed to really stand out. And really, when we look at the whole upgrade system and the different perks and slots, they're really useless, right? For example, body is just made up of athletics, which should be dictated by cyberware. Then you have annihilation, which is basically shotguns, and then lastly you have Street Fire, which doesn't make any sense because it's melee and it should be with blades, but yet blades is in, I think, reflex, which has assault, handgun, and freaking blades. Like, it's like, what? Shouldn't that all go under, you know, melee? And then of course we have cool, which is basically stealth, and a sort of weird berserk armor system called cool, and it's just all confused. I would just throw it all out. Okay, start off 5 categories for this, and I will go back to kind of a traditional Fallout system, not to try to copy that game too much, but just have your core upgrade categories be stealth, engineering, hacking, which is basically a net runner, melee, and guns. So basically out of these you would choose which one to upgrade to 10, just like Fallout, and which one to upgrade, because you would probably only have enough points to max out 2 categories, while the other 3 would probably be 1, 2, or 3 at the maximum if you want to kind of like try and spread it out, or you can have it more evenly divided up, whatever the case. What this is supposed to do is kind of give a cutoff to like what you can build and have more definitive builds instead of just having these general perks, right? So what happens is you build your character, basically you put the perks in, right? Then it determines what kind of cyberware you can get throughout the game based on what you put in. So basically, if you have max runner at 10 and then put the rest into engineering, you'd be able to craft special hacks and robots that is exclusive to that build, and you will get perks to go towards that build, and you'll get a certain type of cyberware that you can use to enhance your abilities, which will also give you extra perks, which you'll be able to view in a 6th slot, which is reserved for extra perks that you may get from a companion or your life path or the cyberware that you currently have equipped. Let me give you an example of another build. What if you invested your points in engineering and weapons? So basically you would be able to craft exclusive weapons and exclusive attachments that you probably won't find nowhere else in the game but in that build, because you're actually creating, it's kind of like an innovation perk where you're going to create different mods for your gun. And speaking of the attachment system, instead of having the stupid, you know, upgrades, the rare, legendary, yes, that'll still be there, but it'll be more like a gunsmith system from Modern Warfare where you equip attachments per gun. So like maybe at the beginning of the game it has the basic attachments that you're only gonna see probably level 5 through 15, right? But as you progress through the game, as you get higher level, the attachments on the base guns change to reflect, you know, rarer types, legendary types, and even, you know, one of a kind types, to make the difference in power in different types of weapons. Instead, in this game, right, they have the attachments, or how many attachments you could put on the weapon, be the rarity, which doesn't make any sense. Every weapon should have just its own base stats and just stay like that while you be able to put like maybe 4 attachments, depending on how many attachments the gun can hold. And the actual attachments themselves have the rarity to them. Like one may shoot acid bullets, and you put that in a sniper, you just have this deadly combination combined with your cyberware, which this game completely failed on that level, because when you put in the demo, and I forgot to mention this in that part, when you're in the demo, which they lie about this completely, right? You get to that little cutscene one time, then the next time they just don't even go back to it. You don't get any other immersion, none of that. So they lied about it completely, and that's probably the most egregious part about the demo. And all the Ripper Docs hardly have any stock of any kind of special cyberware that makes a difference. Cyberware doesn't give you new abilities, it doesn't open up any special class types. It's just giving you a little boost and an upgrade, which the cyber system is supposed to completely modify your body and give you certain different perks depending on which one you equip. So have it fail this miserably. And not only that, like the Mikoshi eyes or Kiyoshi eyes or whatever you call it, there's only like in the eye section, there's only like 3 upgrades, which are one of the same, which upgrades your eyes. So basically everything about this system is just a complete failure, and all of it was stripped out due to time constraints. And what it leaves us with is just an absolutely just abhorrent system. Instead of doing the logical thing, like I bring up again, having different kind of eyes that emphasize different kind of play styles in your different main builds, right? So let's just say you got eyes that mainly are for stealth, right? It might give you the ability to see the percentages of where your enemies can see you at and which course or direction that you should take, right? Or maybe when you upgrade that ability, you can see their line of sight like you see in other games. Like on your radar, you can literally see their line of sight and be able to go around and avoid them. And maybe when you max that out, you'll be able to see their actual rotation spots, right? Where they're actually gonna go to and stay in the general range of, so you can avoid those places or stay in those places as little as possible, knowing this enemy AI is probably gonna stay by the vending machine for the next 10 to 15 seconds, then he's gonna walk over to the stairs and then walk back. So you're gonna already know their whole rotation patterns and be able to move through them more efficiently. And everything I just explained is possible within the current framework of the game. I mean, imagine all these features that I've mentioned for this whole video being stacked on top of each other. We all know what that game would come out to be. That's the game, at least I was expecting from CPR based off their other game, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And this game is just a complete utter it's just so confusing with the mechanics working against the game instead of having symmetry and the different mechanics of the game working off each other. And CPR has this weird thing with this game being detailed, I mean just super detailed in some areas, or just failing in basic concepts of RPGs, story structure, and all these just basic stuff that you thought they would have down before adding the detail. This game is like if Leonardo da Vinci drew all the best details of the Mona Lisa's face and then just scrabbled the rest of the body. Like, it is just so confusing how a game that has such good map detail and very good lore and specifics but can't get the basics of the game down. And then we gotta come to the last part of this video, which is probably going to be the most meme worthy, and that's the performance. Because even the good mechanics in the game, they get bogged down by the awful performance because this came out on last gen consoles, which they should never seen the light of day on. Like literally, I don't know if I'm talking to somebody and they stop talking, whether they were meant to stop talking or whether it was a bug that made them stop talking. And then every time, and it constantly happened in this game, right, where I'll be running to a new area and basically nothing has been popped in yet, and it was alleviated through some of the updates, but when it first came out it was awful. And then randomly it'll just overload the game and then the game will crash. Like, it'll get overloaded. But one good thing I will say, the save system in this game saved my playthrough, because the save system, I don't know if it instinctively knew when it was gonna crash, but literally it would save right before it crashed every single time without fail throughout 130-hour playthrough, which I can kind of find amazing that the save system was that well implemented. But that doesn't come anywhere near overturning the awful performance of this game that I could hardly even get through. And I was lucky more than other people. Other people that just could not straight up play the game. It was deleting their saves, and I'm lucky that I even finished and even was able to start up a second playthrough. And even in my first playthrough, missions, which is the most annoying part about this game, missions were getting bugged out where I couldn't even finish them. Like in the demo mission where, you know, those medics come and get that girl Sandra Dorset, they just didn't even come. They just got cheeseburgers and never even showed up. And I know a lot of fans of this game that love the idea, love the concept of this game, because I love this concept. I enjoyed some of the aspects of this game and what it could have been and what it should have, could have, but I have to stick in the now and what it is, all the bad and the good and sometimes the ugly. And for me, Cyberpunk 2077 is a 6 out of 10. It's an above average game that has great details in some areas, but it's just absolutely just abhorrent and below average in other areas, which makes me give it just above average. And it falls woefully short of the 11 out of 10 that people wanted to believe this game to be. And in the end, CPR failed us. The management failed, the developers not giving enough time to make this game, all in the name of greed, because they knew while the pandemic was going on that this game would have gotten so much airtime and everybody's indoors that they were willing to risk this game ever reaching its full potential to get that extra amount of cash. Ended up backfiring on them gladly, because they deserve all the blowback they get for how this game has been handled for the past year. And it only hurts us, the fans, because we wanted this game to be the shining light in this industry, the next gen experience going forward that every publisher and developer can look at and say, that's the type of detail we need to have in our game coming to this next generation. But instead, Cyberpunk 2077 is a side reminder that greed rules this industry over innovation. And at the end of the day, all these corporations care about is money and not the products that make them money. So for all those CPR fanboys who are talking about they can do no wrong, this, that, and the third, y'all learned a very important lesson today. Trust no corporation. Because I think we can all agree, at the end of the day, we got Cyberpunk.
You work for me.